Welcome. Today we're zooming way past the daily breaking news alerts to uncover the hidden, unwritten rules of international relations. We're going to explore a truly mind-bending perspective from Alexander Wendt's constructivist theory, and we'll see if we can actually decode the invisible social structures that govern global behavior. Okay, let's dive right into this, because it brings up a really fundamental question at the heart of global politics. Does having no global police mean we're just doomed to constant war? We often assume that because there isn't some giant world government, international relations is just a chaotic war of all against all. It's a pretty terrifying thought, right? But today, we're going to challenge that assumption head on. To do that, we have to rethink a word you probably hear all the time: anarchy. Now, in international relations, anarchy simply means the absence of centralized authority. Literally, there's no 911 a country can call if it gets invaded. But, and this is a massive but here, anarchy does not mean the absence of culture or shared ideas. Even without a world's government telling everyone what to do, there's absolutely a global culture that shapes how states act and interact. Think of it like this. It's kind of like studying human society. When sociologists study society, they don't sit around asking why individual humans exist, right? They just take people as a given and then study how they interact. Well, to understand the international system, we've got to do the exact same thing with states. We take states as a given, and then we look at the social environment they're swimming in. Which brings us to this absolutely foundational quote from Alexander Wendt. Anarchy, as such, is an empty vessel and has no intrinsic logic. I really want to let that sink in for a second. Anarchy isn't inherently violent, and it isn't inherently cooperative. It's literally just an empty container. It only takes on the meaning, the shape, and the logic of whatever social culture states collectively decide to pour into it. So, what exactly are states pouring into that vessel? Well, Wendt identifies three distinct cultures. The first one is the Hobbesian culture. If you've ever pictured global politics as this brutal dog-eat-dog world where only the strong survive, yeah, that's a Hobbesian system. It revolves entirely around the concept of the enemy. And an enemy engages in what Wendt calls deep revisionism, meaning they aren't just trying to, say, steal a border town or win a trade dispute. They literally refuse to recognize your right to exist. It is a hardcore kill-or-be-killed environment. When you populate a world with enemies like that, you get a very grim Hobbesian logic. States are basically forced to engage in deep revisionism themselves just to survive. Decision-makers have to expect the absolute worst-case scenario 24/7. They become totally obsessed with relative military power, knowing that even the slightest advantage the enemy gets is going to be used to destroy them. And if war does break out, there are zero limits on the violence. It creates this tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy of realpolitik and endless preparation for total war. Honestly, very much like Europe before the modern era. But thankfully, that's not exactly where we live today. Let's move to and see how this builds into the second concept, the Lockean culture. This right here is the actual foundation of our modern international system, and it replaces enemies with rivals. Now, a rival might still use violence to advance their interests, but crucially, they engage in shallow revisionism. They might argue with you over a trade route or squabble over a border mine, but at the end of the day, they respect your basic right to exist. It's like stealing a customer rather than burning down the entire store. And this brilliantly illustrates the sharp difference between the two. The Hobbesian enemy operates on a ruthless kill-or-be-killed mentality with absolutely no internal limits on violence. But the Lockean rival operates on a live-and-let-live dynamic. Think of it as the difference between trying to literally assassinate your competitor versus just trying to outsell them in the marketplace. This mental shift from enemy to rival completely changes the game, creating the Lockean logic. Because states respect each other's basic sovereignty, the risk of total wipe-you-off-the-map annihilation drops dramatically. This means states can actually focus on the future, rather than just surviving the day. They can care about absolute economic gains, building wealth, instead of just hoarding relative military power. And most importantly, when violence does happen, it's self-limiting. We actually get things like just war theory and international laws that dictate what is and isn't allowed in combat. And if you want proof that we currently live in a Lockean culture, just look at the number 200. There are roughly 200 recognized states in the world today. In a true Hobbesian system, the weak are instantly conquered and absorbed by the strong. You'd have a massive death rate for countries. But today, tiny microstates like San Marino or Monaco survive right alongside massive global superpowers. Why? Simply because of a shared social culture where the strong actually restrain themselves and recognize the sovereignty of the weak. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Which brings us to a really vital question about state psychology. Why do states actually obey these rules? Seriously, why follow these rules if there's no global police force to arrest you? Wendt explains this through the 3 degrees of internalization. First is force. States obey simply because they are coerced. They lack the power to break the rules. In the 2nd degree, states obey out of price or self-interest. They calculate that, hey, following the rules brings me economic or political benefits. But in the 3rd degree, states obey out of legitimacy. They follow the norms because it's become part of their core identity. They genuinely believe it's just the right thing to do. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how these 3 degrees of obedience map perfectly onto the 3 major theories of international relations. Realist theory focuses on that 1st degree, pure force and coercion. Neoliberal theory focuses on the 2nd degree, calculated price and self-interest. But constructivism, it steps right into that 3rd degree, exploring how perceived legitimacy and shared culture profoundly shape a state's very identity. And that brings us to the ultimate impact of all this, constructing the state. See, when states reach that 3rd degree, when they're obeying rules because they genuinely believe in them, the international culture actually constructs who they are. Wendt relates this to the Foucault effect. The shared Lockean culture we live in implicitly trains states to view themselves as distinct, possessive individuals. They become actors who inherently own themselves, have recognized rights, and respect the property of others, literally just because that's what it means to be a modern state. This culture actively shapes reality in 4 specific ways. It decides system membership criteria, meaning who even counts as a recognized state. It determines legitimate types of states. It fosters collective team identities, allowing countries to band together against outsiders. And it instills that possessive individualism we just talked about. So the crucial point is that the very concept of the modern, sovereign state isn't just some biological or geographic fact. It is a social construct that we've all essentially agreed upon. We've seen how shared ideas can turn a chaotic war zone into a society of rivals who, while they might sometimes be in conflict, largely respect each other's right to exist. But remember Wendt's quote, "Anarchy is just an empty vessel." We filled it with the Hobbesian culture in the past, and we filled it with the Lockean culture today. So I leave you with this final thought. If changing our shared ideas can literally change the rules of the entire world, what will we build next? Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.